A lot of the fantasy community does their rookie drafts right after the NFL drafts. And when you're there with that short turnaround time of trying to figure out your rankings, trying to understand what all these teams, all these players went, who they drafted, you're trying to really understand and paint a full picture. But today, I'm bringing you some fundamental tips that you need to remember going into your rookie drafts. We tend to forget those basic things that we try and practice all off season until we get to our rookie drafts because we're scrambling and still trying to gather our thoughts. So once again, bring you some helpful tips that you need to remember going into your 2024 rookie drafts, and stay to the end because I do have a very helpful bonus tip. All right, before I get into it, I just want to say there is not a perfect science to the tips that I'm bringing you today. These are things that I try to practice, Zach tries to practice, that we try to preach each and every week on our live streams, when you sign up for the fantasy hotline, and so much more. We just try to do the best practices as possible as we go into our rookie drafts to have the highest success rate coming out of our rookie drafts. Okay, so keep that in mind. Not everything is going to hit. Not everything's going to be a perfect science. Just having a conversation. Comment down below your best rookie tips that maybe I missed out in this video. And my first tip for you guys here: follow your rankings / creators rankings and limit the "I have a feeling" pick. And I'll get to that later here. A lot of people spend so much time creating their rankings, creating their tiers, thinking about each and every snap that these players can do, every situation that each of these players can be in, and you create your rankings, but you don't follow them. You throw them out the window as if they never exist. And that happens so many times in our fantasy hotline, where people send us messages and say, I have this guy higher, but I just have a feeling. Once again, I'll get to that later. Another thing is, a lot of people spend money on whichever creator that you are supporting, whether it's us or whether any other flock fantasy creators on there, and you don't follow our rankings either. We do this day and night, and we're not saying we're perfect, but if you're going to spend some money, maybe try and follow to your best of your ability, and maybe mesh your rankings with our rankings together, and maybe find an even medium instead of just going rogue when it comes down to rankings. Now, I know a lot of people get worked up when it comes down to players that you love. Hypothetically, in this draft, right, you have someone like a Brian Thomas Jr. that you love, who is currently your wide receiver 4 in your rookie rankings. But you have an Adonai Mitchell who is maybe your wide receiver 7, but you just have a feeling about Adonai Mitchell. So you spend all this time watching film on Brian Thomas Jr. You spend all this time breaking down his analytics, and his analytics is better. His film is better because you have him as the 4th best wide receiver in this class. But you look at Adonai Mitchell, and you can see the flaws, but you can see the good things about Adonai Mitchell, but he's your wide receiver 7. But you just have a feeling. We've all been in that boat. We all been in the boat where it's like, man, that guy's a little bit too low in my rankings, but I love his landing spot. I love what he's going to be doing. I believe in him. But the player that is purely available, that is better according to your rankings, according to your research, to your analytics, is better on paper. Follow your rankings. And look, we've all been there, like I said, and this is where I say limit "I have a feeling" pick. I think if you are wanting to do this, we need to limit ourselves. Whether you do a 4-round mock draft or a 4-round rookie draft or 3-round or 5-round, limit yourself to maybe 1, "I have a feeling" pick. 2, "I have a feeling" pick. That can even be implemented in your dynasty startups as well, not even just rookie drafts. You have to limit yourself on the decisions that you're going to be making when it comes down against your rankings or your creators' rankings that you spend a lot of time and effort and money in researching and trying to win your fantasy leagues here. Okay, so once again, follow your creators' ranking to the best of your ability. All right, there's going to be a blend of a couple tips, so definitely follow along closely here. My second tip that I'm bringing you today that we preach every single time, especially if you follow us and you watch our Dynasty review live streams is take the best player available. Every year there's a fantasy manager who has swindled someone in the previous year in their trade and somehow has a top 5 pick but somehow won the championship. Let's just say that manager has the 101 in a super flex league, but their quarterbacks are Joe Burrow and Anthony Richardson, but their wide receiver room is getting old. And at the 101, you should be taking Marvin Harrison Jr. because your wide receiver room is getting old and your quarterback room is set. Wrong. You should be taking the best player available, which is Caleb Williams. And why and what is best player available is a primarily focused, I wrote this down so you guys can see, primarily focused to selecting the highest rated available player regardless of position, teams, and draft strategy. Right? The idea behind drafting the best player available is to ensure that you get the most talented player on your team, which can lead to a greater opportunity, a greater return in investment later on down the road here. Now, when you think of best player available, just because you have 2 good quarterbacks in a super flex league and you shouldn't be taking Caleb Williams, you have the opportunity to trade. Okay, you have those things that you could potentially do. So just because you need a wide receiver, but you have Joe Burrow and Anthony Richardson, and you have the 101 with Caleb Williams, you know that return that you could potentially get when you sell one of those quarterbacks is most likely going to be of equal value or potentially significantly greater because you are in a super flex league if you sell one of those quarterbacks, which leads me to my next point is draft for value and trade for need. This goes hand in hand with best player available. We would never recommend, if you were to have the 101 or even a top 7 pick in the 2024 draft and you are in desperate need of a running back, you know that that running back is going to take your team to a championship level where you needed to go to the playoffs. We would never ever recommend that you reach for a running back with that top 7 pick unless the ADP aligns with that. Okay, if you have a top 7 pick in the draft, go and see what type of running back that you could potentially get with that top 7 pick instead of drafting that player. Go out and see if you can trade for him. Once again, you're not drafting for need, you're trading for need. Okay, that's the difference. Draft for value, trade for need. Think about it. If I told you right now I have the 107, like I brought an example here, and I need a running back, but Trey Benson went to the 2nd round to the Dallas Cowboys. Even right now, as we are mocking Trey Benson to the Dallas Cowboys, going at the 107 in the 2nd round in the NFL draft, he's still not equivalent to the 107. Now, maybe in a year from now, where maybe he finishes the top 5 running back in his rookie drafts, maybe that's the case. But we would never recommend it because that chances of him hitting that is really, really slim. So you still go best player available at the 107, or you trade that 107 to see what you can get. Can you get a Saquon Barkley? Can you get a Devon Achane? Can you get a Kyron Williams? Can you insert already proven running back in the NFL, or maybe trade out of that pick and continue to look for a running back later on, and you draft for value, because that 107 could potentially be Brian Thomas Jr., who goes to the Buffalo Bills, who goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That 107 could potentially be J.J. McCarthy, who falls to the Denver Broncos, or who falls to the Minnesota Vikings. There's so many different ways that 107 could manipulate it where that can be a higher value at that time, rather than you drafting and reaching for that running back that you potentially want to acquire going into that. My next point is getting your guys in the 3rd and 4th round. I love this because there's a couple of different scenarios and phrases that we say. We have dart throw city, go get your guy, my guys, whatever the case may be. This year's class, I would say, is a little bit more difficult than others when you think of going, getting your guy and just taking a chance and maybe reaching for a third round pick that you believe in rather than others, because this wide receiver class is phenomenal and you can genuinely get a good second round value type of wide receiver in the early third rounds in this draft. But I would say maybe in other drafts, like maybe the 2023 draft, for example, I think is a good example of that here. And I kind of bring that to you in a couple of graphics here. Let's look at the 23 draft class, where we see some third and fourth round players who were my guys, either my guys or Zach my guys. I bought him as well. We like to call them dart throws once again, and how they worked out. And some didn't. For sure, some didn't work out at all, but you can see where some of them did work out. Have a look at the Alpha League here, our Alpha rookie drafts, where you can see I have him highlighted in green. Chase Brown went at the 3-2. That was my guy. Some people took him earlier. Luke Musgrave, who I love, who went to the Green Bay Packers. I got him. You can see here at the 305. Michael Wilson, Zach took, who is in a very interesting scenario at the moment. People was like, oh, Mike Wilson, he went to the Chargers, or not Chargers. He went to the Cardinals. What's going to be happening there? What about a Tank Dell? I got him at the 312. The 312. And at the time, I was like, I don't know about Tank Dell. Early coming into that offseason, I was saying, I'm not sure about Tank Dell. And then my tune switched early after the NFL draft and saying, you know what? After the stories that I'm hearing with CJ Stroud, after the things that I'm hearing saying that they call CJ Stroud and said, I want Tank Dell, he became my guy going into that late third round pick there. Going into the Lima League, you can also see a couple of different scenarios here. You see Luke Musgrave after 3-4. I took again Tajay Spears, who is a big part of the NFL and the Tennessee Titans as well. I know Tony Pollard is there. Tank Dell again at the 310. And look at Zach at the 4-2, getting a my guy, and Puka Nacua in the 4-2 in our Lima League. And I brought you these two leagues because Alpha is our rookie draft that happens right after the NFL draft. And then Lima League is our furthest away from the rookie draft. This is probably in, if I'm not mistaken, in August, where we're doing this rookie draft. Or sorry, what is it? Yeah, I think it's in August or early July. Don't mark my words. Comment down below if you are in the Lima League. I forgot. But you can see how the ADP has drastically changed when you see the Alpha League and the Lima League, and how these guys maneuver throughout the ADP all throughout the offseason as we get into the rookie drafts. Going into my next tip here, there is no perfect science between landing spot and talent. Trust your process. And why do I say this? Because I'm a victim. I would raise my hand and say I am a victim of this. All of last year, I was the biggest CJ Stroud believer. I was getting roasted in the comments saying that, why you believe in CJ Stroud, Ohio State, you shouldn't be, trusting these Ohio State quarterbacks, so on and so forth. And I was just saying, I think he's better. I did my rankings, I did my research, I did my film breakdown, my analytics, and I thought that he was better than Bryce Young. Now, that was the talent. Now you look at the landing spot when it came down to CJ Stroud, and that's where my tune switched, and I put too much emphasis on landing spot rather than talent. If we go back and compare the Panthers and Texans as a whole coming into the 2023 season, I can guarantee you the majority of us, 90%, 95% of the fantasy community would say the Carolina Panthers were the better landing spot on paper. Right? You think of Frank Wright, who had successful quarterbacks. You think of Thomas Brown, who was a new OC. You think of Josh McCown, who was a quarterback coach. You think of how they brought in Miles Sanders. They brought in Adam Thielen. They drafted Jonathan Mingo. They had a somewhat decent offensive line, at least in the thought process of them going there with Ike Ekwonu and so on and so forth. They had, Derek Brown. They had so many other people on both sides of the ball. On paper, they were good. I was like, Bryce Young going to the Carolina Panthers with the weapons that he has. We had a proven asset in Adam Thielen. Jonathan Mingo was an early second-round pick. Miles Sanders had success, and it was going to be back again with Thomas Brown and his offensive coordinator. That wasn't the case. You look at the Houston Texans, D'Amico Ryan, who was a successful NFL player, Bobby Slowick, who at the time, a young offensive coordinator coming up, and then you had Tank Dell. Then you had Nico Collins, who wasn't proven, who Tank Dell, I took a shot on, but I didn't necessarily believe because he was undersized. John Mechie, who didn't show anything, but he was a second-round draft pick. Devin Singletary, who was also picked up off the street, and Dameon Pierce. On paper, we can all agree that the Carolina Panthers were better on paper, but that wasn't the case. Follow or trust your process, because when you think of it, no matter what, there is no perfect science. We don't know how things are going to pan out. We don't know these offensive coordinators. We don't know really anything because the NFL is unpredictable. So I would just say trust your process, and there's no perfect science between landing spot and talent. I want to bring you a couple different examples. For example, Garrett Wilson went to the New York Jets. Amazing talent. And honestly, he has been doing it all by himself over there for the New York Jets. Imagine if he had a competent quarterback. Imagine Garrett Wilson went to anywhere else where he had a lower tier competent quarterback. Zach Wilson wasn't the quarterback that he needed. Now he has Aaron Rodgers and so on and so forth. So look, basically what I'm saying is, trust your process. If you have a wide receiver graded significantly higher coming into this year, right? Let's just say you have Ladd McConkey really high, but he goes to a landing spot that you absolutely hate. Maybe like the New England Patriots. Ladd McConkey goes to New England Patriots, who doesn't have the best quarterback because Jacoby Brissett is there. But you see Adonai Mitchell, and he went to Trevor Lawrence in the Jags, or he went to the Pittsburgh Steelers, or he went to the Giants in the second round. Look, sometimes you can definitely change your tune on a player, but once again, go back, reevaluate, and trust your process, and understand that sometimes, landing spot is going to be way more than the actual talent, and sometimes the talent is just going to trump the landing spot. So once again, it's not a perfect science, but something that we need to account for. And now my bonus tip that we have here that I absolutely love. When I thought about this, I was like, oh my goodness, I think this should be one of the best tips in the world out there, because so many people have won their leagues by doing this and have gotten incredible fantasy assets by doing this as well. Hit your waiver wires as soon as your rookie draft ends, okay? Because you can find a tremendous amount of hidden gems after your rookie drafts. Think about it, right? The biggest one we can think of for this past year is Puka Nacua and Kyren Williams. You saw in that Alpha League graphic, Puka Nacua was not drafted. He was on the waiver wire. And a lot of that happened throughout all of our leagues, where Puka Nacua was just a waiver wire pick until, either Zach or myself was saying, okay, Puka, I can see the situation. Right? I know Robert Woods was no longer on the team. OBJ was gone. Cooper Kupp was there. Who else do they have? Cooper Kupp got injured. And then Puka Nacua stepped up. No one thought about Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams was still in waiver wires for a lot of those times. What about Dontavion Wicks, who went to a team that was stacked at the wide receiver position? Demario Douglas, who was going undrafted. Isaiah Likely a couple years back, right? Keon Mitchell. Honestly, the list could potentially go on if you think of all those other drafts, undrafted rookies that have been picked up and maybe just played a small role. It doesn't matter. What's going to hurt? You're picking these guys up. Maybe you have an extra taxi spot. Maybe you have 2 extra bench spots on your team because you have one of these deep leagues. Pick and hit up the waiver wires, because there are value players going into the 2024 draft that could potentially burst into the scene later on here, guys. So guys, comment down below. Let me know what you think of these tips, man. Let me know if I missed anything. Keep in mind, these are just reminders. Put on some sticky notes. Make sure that you guys don't throw away your fundamental things that you have been practicing, that we have been preaching going into your rookie drafts. Because I know as this video is going to be released and you're watching this video, we're 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, meaning that we're probably just under 2 or just over 2 weeks away from your rookie drafts. Once again, keep this in mind. Let me know what you think. Comment down below. And as always, it's all love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.